We are live now. And now got the link?
Yes, ma'am. I think participants have got the link. Vipin sir has posted, so we are good to go.
We should wait till 3, or can we start?
You should wait till 3. 3.
Yeah.
Thoda,
Start around 3:03, 3:05, something like that.
This video is not working? Frozen?
whose video?
Yours.
No. No. It's working.
अभी क्या हुआ?
एक बार मैम YouTube पे भी चेक कर लें, कल की तरह गैलरी व्यू आ रहा है या सर स्पीकर फोकस में है स्पॉटलाइट में?
हाँ देख.
यस मैम, आई थिंक आज तो सही आ रहा है. सर स्पीकर फोकस में है स्पॉटलाइट में.
When I speak, कोई sound तो नहीं आ रही है extra, Arnav?
No.
Is it all right? Echo है? Is there an echo?
Not really. No.
नहीं सर, क्लियरली आ रही है आपकी
Technically,
आवाज.
there should be absolutely no echo. वरना
Yeah,
क्या होता है?
And in this you can't pick questions from Q&A. Arnav will ask the questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because it's from YouTube.
So I have to speak for about 1 hour.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
After which Arnav will take over for the question answers, and for another half an hour you can
Non-stop 1 hour, eh?
Well, you can stop a little bit.
ये बड़ा ही
It's
Already there is a question asking you about books. Books for both qualitative and quantitative.
एंड मैम सर ने असाइनमेंट भी दिया है ना, इसलिए भी लोग अब पढ़ेंगे.
हाँ ठीक है. असाइनमेंट बता दीजिए, किताब बता दीजिए. That is Alan Bryman.
You are already live. You're live.
Okay.
Say it later.
Ma'am, you tell me when to start, I'll start.
Start. We are good to go, Nirmala.
Okay. A very good afternoon to all of you, all the participants of the Faculty Induction Orientation Program organized by the Teaching Learning Center of Ramanujan College. Today, we have a lecture by Dr. Chandrasekhar Sharma. He's going to speak to us today on understanding research, quantitative analysis. But before he does that, it is my privilege, as well as a kind of an honor for me, to introduce Dr. Sharma to all of you. Dr. Sharma is a very distinguished academic and an educator who is presently teaching in the Sri Ram College of Commerce, SRCC, in Delhi University. But he has a very broad experience of teaching as well as research. He has published 11 books and 41 research papers. His expertise and specializations are in the areas of fuzzy financial ratios, mergers and acquisitions, servant leadership, spirituality and green purchasing intentions, and default probability trust. So as an eminent academic and a scholar, he has been acting in consultative capacities to various organizations and institutions. And he's a very sought after speaker. So he goes for many lectures and also to conduct lots of many refresher courses and workshops all across the country and sometimes abroad. He has been to the Punjab Police Academy. He has been to TIS Mumbai, CPDHE Delhi University. He has been at the Guru Jambeshwar University in Rohtak. He has regularly lectured at the Manav Rachna University, and of course at the National Academy for Training and Research in Social Security. But I don't think introducing Dr. Sharma is complete without me telling you that he has had a very close relationship with Ramanujan College. He has come and delivered lectures on research and research methodology, both qualitative and quantitative, and on many aspects of management and areas related to management studies. We've had a long association with him, and many of my younger colleagues look up to him as a kind of a role model teacher. I can say that he's a very, very passionate teacher. He is completely into his subject whenever he is speaking, and is extremely engrossing the way he engages his students or the listeners of his lectures. And with his wide experience and a wide knowledge base, his lectures are multidimensional, interdisciplinary, and extremely interesting. So I will not be in between Dr. Sharma and you. I welcome Dr. Sharma once again to Ramanujan College and to this faculty induction and orientation program. And I'm looking forward to, and once again, a very, very engrossing session with Dr. Sharma. We will, Dr. Sharma, first of all, listen to you for about an hour, after which my colleague, Dr. Arnav, will look at the questions. He's monitoring the YouTube, so he will look at the questions and he will come with the questions that the participants are asking you. And for the next half an hour, we can go through the question answer session. So now over to Dr. Chandrasekhar Sharma. Sir.
Thank you, Dr. Nirmalya, for all these nice words. And thank you very much for inviting me to be part of this refresher or orientation course that your college is offering. The topic that you have given to me today, Dr. Nirmalya, is on quantitative research. Now, I think as far as the audience are concerned, they belong to different disciplines. I think they must be from science as well as social sciences and literature, etc. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. They're from all disciplines, and of course, people from your core discipline of commerce and management also. Yes.
All right. Okay. Fine. So let us, I think we can discuss the quantitative research. Well, you know, ladies and gentlemen, we shall actually, you know, there is a very important issue that faces us all, and that issue relates to how to conduct research. Now, research has to be conducted in a manner that it generates knowledge, and that knowledge becomes acceptable not merely to the scholars, but there is a science of knowledge. The science of knowledge is called epistemology. Epistemology is the science of knowing. And if I say in one sentence, then I would say epistemology is concerned with deciding what is acceptable knowledge. All knowledge is not acceptable knowledge. Some of the knowledge is not acceptable. Like this. For example, each one of us, each human being around, is generating knowledge. And how we generate knowledge? It is very simple. We make some observation in the world around, and the moment we make an observation and we make the repeated observations about something, we make generalizations. There is one example which I often say. Say, for example, you happen to visit, say, Japan. And there, suppose you lost your watch. And you are disappointed because the watch was expensive. And you go back to your hotel, disappointed that you have lost such an expensive watch. But after some time, you find that somebody rings the bell of the door. The person from the hotel opens the door. You open the door and you find that the person from the hotel is standing over there, the service individual. And he says, sir, you had lost this particular watch, I think. And you say, yes, it is definitely, I lost it. And you get it. You are very thankful to the individual. And then you ask him, how did you get it? So he says, this was found by somebody. And that fellow was able to trace you down right up to this place. Would you like to see him? He is waiting in the lobby. So you say, okay, yes, fine. You immediately get ready, go down to the lobby, meet him, you express your thanks. And then he gives you a long story of how he was able to trace you. And you are wondering, you are surprised. How is it that a person in a foreign land does not even know, happened to get the watch, lost watch, which could be very ordinary for him. And he was not tempted to take it home. And he traced me all the way. And now you, on the basis of this experience, you create a theory. You make a generalization. And the generalization is that Japanese are very honest people. Now, this is a generalization. You have created a knowledge. Now, but should this knowledge be an acceptable knowledge to all of us around? That is a question. So epistemology is that branch of knowledge which is concerned with science of knowing, deciding what is acceptable knowledge and what is not acceptable knowledge. So scholars over the years have developed principles on the basis of which only one can decide whether knowledge generated, created, extended is acceptable or not. Now, there are various ways of generating knowledge. One method for generating knowledge is what we call the quantitative way of generating the knowledge. And you see, here we come to a very interesting question. And that question is that is there a fundamental difference in the scientific approach, scientific research? I'm using the word scientific research. The word scientific research here means that the quantitative research is concerned with scientific research. That is, adopting a method which will be acceptable to, which can be considered logical, systematic, observational, and which can be labeled as actually scientific. Now, one question that arises here is that is there a difference in the scientific research which is undertaken by different branches of life, different branches of knowledge, such as, for example, physical sciences, life sciences or biological sciences, and social sciences. Now, there is one very dominant school of thought, and that dominant school of thought says that the methods of physics only should be followed. If an acceptable knowledge has to be generated, then only those methods should be accepted which are followed by this branch of knowledge called physics. And these people are called logical positivists. And these logical positivists say one thing, that all sciences are actually, whether they are social sciences, physical sciences, life sciences, all these sciences are basically one and the same, provided they follow the same method as it has been stated, as is followed by the physicists. And you know what physicists do? Physicists' method is very clear. They make one thing very, very clear. And that thing is that number one, the knowledge must be objective. It should not be affected by the subjective opinions and thoughts. It should be repeatable. It should be testable. It should be observable. And there should be a difference between the observer and the observed. And one more thing these physicists say, that only that knowledge will be acceptable knowledge which is experienced by five senses. Now, this is what the physicists say. Now, please see. That means if we say something which is repeatable, testable, observable, which is objective, which is experienced only by the five senses, and above all, the knowledge which is measurable. Please notice, very important point here. Something which can't be measured does not exist. Very important. This is a very big claim in research methodology which is based on the approach of physicists. And this is called, actually, in philosophy, we call it positivism. And this is very clear. If you cannot measure, if you want to study, for example, love, you cannot get away by saying that love cannot be measured. If you cannot measure love, it does not exist as far as research is concerned. All your emotions, whether it is anger or it is disappointment, depression, anxiety, happiness, joy, hope, or it is something like, say for example, social hysteria. We often come across that in case of riots. What we come across? We come across social hysteria. So all these things, we can study them if and only if we can measure them. This is one way of looking at things. You have already listened to a lecture on qualitative research. That method is diametrically opposite to the method that I am talking about, and that method talks of qualitative dimensions, and that is also acceptable knowledge. But as far as quantitative research methods are concerned, here only that knowledge is acceptable knowledge which can be measured, which can be observed, which can be experienced by five senses, which is testable, which is measurable, which is testable, repeatable. And of course, generalizations can be made, which is evaluatable also at the same time. So these are some of the aspects of the quantitative research. This is in the root of these aspects that I have mentioned to you. These lie in the root of the nature of quantitative research. But it does not mean that quantitative research is applicable only to physics, for that matter. It is equally applicable to the life sciences, to the social sciences, and to other, even literature for that matter. It is applicable even to the study of poems. It is applicable. And why it is applicable? It is applicable because all these sciences have some degree of commonality among them. And that commonality comes from four basic aspects. First aspect is what we call universalism. All these sciences, including literature of any language, they all aim at the analysis, the study, the examination of various phenomena, whether literary, non-literary, social, non-social, physical, non-physical, they all aim at one thing, and that is finding generalization. Now, my friends from sciences, my friends from social sciences, my friends from commerce and management would be able to appreciate it. What about my colleagues from literature? In literature, what do you study? In literature also, what are you studying actually? You try to find the common strands of the authors or the sets of literature or the time period of the literature occurring in a particular time period. You're trying to find common strands, generalizations. So it is this point of universalism that makes all branches of science common, and therefore they are able to utilize, it makes them this particular feature makes them competent to use the quantitative methods. And second aspect that is common to all branches of science is what we call organization. That is organization of ideas, thoughts, concepts, aspects, observations, data. All these are organized, whether it is literature or it is sociology, anthropology, or it is physics, chemistry, mathematics. In all these sciences, we try to organize the ideas, organize thoughts, organize data, organize information, organize concepts to arrive at generalizations. And thirdly, of course, all these branches of study rest on what we technically say skepticism. That is, we always believe that there is always an scope for improvement, whether you are measuring a phenomenon or you are not. But whatever way you are trying to generalize, whatever way you are trying to generate the theory, ultimately, there is always a scope for improvement. We call it a skepticism. And fourthly, the fourth point is that all researchers in all fields, they want to have a peer group. And that peer group is needed for support as well as for evaluation. That is why, we always say that only those research papers have higher value which have peer review system. For example, I will say that Harvard Business Review, it is a journal which is published by Harvard University Business School, but it is not rated very high among the intellectuals, among the professors. And do you know why? Though it is one of the best journals or one of the best magazines that comes out of the business schools of the world, and it is referred to by very large number of executives, students, and even scholars themselves. But it is not rated high only for one reason, that the articles appearing in that are not peer reviewed. The articles are just selected by the editors themselves. So it is this aspect of having a community, common community, that brings us together and gives us the commonality. So, my dear friends, the basic thing is that in all sciences, I would call a study of literature also science. Some of you might disagree, but when the approach you are following is the approach of being systematic and consistent, and you are robust in the analysis of any subject, any phenomenon, even if it is a story, even if these are stories, even if these are novels, even if these are just the analysis of the visuals, the pictographic analysis. If the approach is systematic, approach is consistent, if the approach is robust, in that case, we will say that it is a scientific approach. As long as the analysis fulfills these 5 conditions. What are the conditions? That it is repeatable, it is testable, it is observable, it is measurable, and it is generalization, and it is not subjective, it is actually objective. So if these 5 touchstones are satisfied, that any analysis will be considered as scientific, my dear friends. And if these 5 things can be applied, then it can follow the quantitative approach. The quantitative, this is one aspect. The second aspect of the quantitative research is what we will say that quantitative research focuses essentially on empirical testing. That is, what empirical testing means, that empirical data have to be collected systematically without involving your own subjectivity, your own personal thought processes. And empirical data has to be examined systematically for the data patterns. Now, if this is the first and foremost important aspect of the quantitative research. Now, we can understand this aspect in a way if we can compare the quantitative research and qualitative research. What is the qualitative research? You already have studied some of this. You have attended some lectures on this aspect. In qualitative research, the focus is on subjectivity of the researcher. See, look at it like this. In quantitative research, our starting point is what lies at the root of the thing is that everything should be measurable. Everything should be objectively measurable. Objectively measurable means that there should be a difference, always a difference between observer and the observed. Only then the objectivity can be maintained. If this particular thing is flouted, then objectivity cannot be maintained. In qualitative research, this subjectivity is allowed. It is permitted. For example, there is a method called ethnography in qualitative research. What do the ethnographers do? They go and join that particular group which they are trying to study. The social group that is being examined by them, they become part of that. For example, suppose somebody wants to study the prisoners. So what the ethnographer would do, he would, with the help of the jail authorities, go and live with the prisoners as one among them. None of the prisoners will know that other prisoners will know that he is actually a researcher. So what he does, he observes the behavior and he would write down his own impressions about whatever is happening over there. And then he would make the generalizations. And this method is acceptable. But it is not so in quantitative research. In quantitative research, only measurable data will have to be collected. If suppose, for example, you want to study the norms that are being followed by the prisoners in a prison. So what a qualitative researcher will do, he will join them as a prisoners. He will sit with them. And then he will try to note down what kind of language they are using, what kind of norms do they have. For example, I'm just sharing with you. One of the norms among the prisoners is that there is a hierarchy of respect over there. The murderers have the highest, are the highest in the hierarchy of the criminals, and the rapists are at the lowest within the jail. Okay. Now, the qualitative researcher will go and sit with the prisoners inside the jail and collect the information. He will write down his notes and whatever the people are talking, stating, and he will try to develop the theory on that basis that hierarchy among the criminals is like this. But what would a quantitative researcher do? His problem is that it must be observed objectively. So what he would do, he would develop a questionnaire. And now it is his duty to have this questionnaire filled up and develop quantitative information through that questionnaire and bring that questionnaire to the computer, feed it, create tables, and numerically give numbers, collect numbers, develop relationships, and then make a statement about the hierarchy of status among the criminals. This is what actually it is, dear friends. So, as far as the qualitative research is concerned, it is concerned with soft data. And quantitative research is concerned with numbers. We can call them hard data. And of course, the focus of quantitative research, I must say, is measurement, my dear friends. We build concepts. We build understanding of the relationships on the basis of the measurement of the concepts. And without measurements, nothing can be done. And here, one thing more, my dear friends, the quantitative approach, we will say, it is a linear process. And what do I mean by linear process? Linear process means that quantitative research follows a method in which there are steps are well defined. For example, in quantitative research, the steps are as follows. Number one, you find out what issue you want to study. And once you have decided what you want to study, you first find out what others have done. We call it literature review. And then second step is you find out what are the gaps in the literature. After identifying the gaps in the literature, you have to tell us what is the importance of your study if you fill up these gaps. Based on those gaps, you decide the objectives of the study. Based on the objectives, you develop hypotheses for the study. And for the hypothesis, for testing the hypothesis, you then determine what kind of data you are going to collect, how you are going to process that data statistically, and then arrive at conclusions in terms of either accepting the hypothesis or rejecting the hypothesis. So quantitative approach is essentially a linear process. All the steps are given, and these steps have to be followed one after the other, and no deviation from this is allowed. In qualitative research, it is not like this. The process is very non-linear. You start with the issue, you set up your objective, and you go to the field, and there you find that whatever you are expecting, that is not happening. Then you are allowed to change your objectives completely. You are also allowed to change your problem also completely. So this is the kind of situation that you have in qualitative research. So in quantitative research, we follow a very, very linear path. And the path is, as we will say, science of we observe, we measure, and once we measure, then we collect the data. The data are analyzed, and then we arrive at the results. So in quantitative research, my dear friends, the fundamental thing, the point of beginning and point of end is measurement. Without measurement, without measurement, quantitative research cannot proceed. This school of thought says what cannot be measured does not exist right away. That's all. And this is the positivist thinking. And you see, here arises a question that there are some aspects of the world, social world, even in physical world, we see many aspects cannot be directly observed. So then we will have to create certain measures. You know, as far as scientists are concerned, there are three types of observables. One, which are directly observables, and second are indirect observables, and third are what we will say the things which can be neither directly observed nor which can be indirectly observed. What is directly observable? Well, you are seeing people fighting. Now, this is very clearly, very directly observable. What is indirectly observable? Indirectly observable, the secondary data. The secondary data is indirectly observable. And there are certain things which you cannot observe either directly or indirectly. You know, a thing like, for example, prejudice. Now, there is no way of observing this, either directly or indirectly. It is all in the mind. You say somebody is prejudiced, somebody is very loving and somebody is full of negativity. We often make these statements. Somebody is angry, even angry, anger for that matter. You know, we see anger directly. What do we see? What do we describe anger? When you say somebody is angry. So actually anger is composite of a large number of things. And anger can be of several types. Anger which is expressed and anger which is not expressed. Which anger are you talking about? Somebody shouts at you. So you say that raising high voice is anger. Is it so? Somebody beating somebody. Is it really angry? Or it is possible that somebody beats someone without really being angry? Just like that. So what happens is that there are certain phenomena, particularly in the social world, which cannot be either directly measured or which can neither be directly observed, and they can also not be observed indirectly. Now these things, these phenomena are actually a part of the mental images in the mind. Say for example, I take the word kindness, or let us call compassion. Now what is compassion? I have done a lot of studies on this particular aspect of compassion. Now, when I ask people what is compassion, so I often do one exercise, and I ask the people, do you know what is compassion? I ask them first question. Practically everybody says, yes, I know what is compassion, what is kindness, I know it. Do you know in your life how many times you have experienced compassion? People then sit back, close their eyes. Some say, I have experienced it once, twice, thrice, 4 times, 5 times. Like this, people say. I say, okay, list down what are your experiences regarding compassion. And the answers I get are like this. Somebody says that, I was facing difficulty in paying my fees, and my teacher came forward and gave me this. Number 2, somebody says that there was a person who was visually challenged, and this individual was facing difficulty in crossing the road. I saw somebody offering a help to this individual and help the individual cross the road. This is an act of compassion. I was having a lot of stomach ache, and I was standing in the queue at a doctor's clinic, and seeing my pain, 2 persons came up to me and said, please don't wait, you go to the doctor first. We will go later. Now this is an act of compassion. Now please see, on the basis of these 3 examples that I have said, is compassion really this? Only this? Or it is something else also? Is a compassion making a visually challenged person cross the road? Is compassion helping a person, asking a person suffering in pain to go to the doctor before them? Is compassion paying the fee of a needy student, or it is something else also? Now what happens is that large number of, when we say that speak about the compassion that you have experienced, people come up with large number of ideas about it. We collect them all, and we arrive at certain points which are common to all these experiences of compassion. When we say that we arrive at the common points relating to that idea of compassion, those common points together create what we call construct. Construct are actually created from the mental images that the subjects have in their mind, and through those mental images we create constructs. And these constructs, mind you, they are actually created by the investigator. He or she collects the mental images of the people from large number of subjects, finds out their commonalities and then creates a construct. So these commonalities are called families of conceptions. Like, for example, we can have compassion for animals, we can have compassion for family members, we can have compassion for subordinates, compassion for human beings, and so on. Different categories of compassion can be there. Say, for example, similarly, say, let us talk of a thing like, say, love, for that matter. So we talk of measuring love. So how to measure love? Again, we go to the subjects, we go to the people, we obtain their mental images of what love is. We find commonalities in them, and based on those commonalities, we create a theoretical construct. And each construct is nothing but family of conceptions. Like, we can have love, parental love of a teacher for the student, love, romantic love for the nation, and so on. But it is necessary that we are able to measure all these aspects. And when we are able to measure all these aspects, then we can say that this is what this particular concept is. And it allows us to discover fine differences, five aspects, superfine dimensions of that particular concept. And we are able to actually measure them, my dear friends. So what happens with the help of measurement? When we are, say, measuring these concepts or these constructs, then we are able to obtain a consistent method, a consistent device, a consistent tool through which we are able to gauge the presence, absence of a particular thing, particular construct, particular concept. And then we are able to analyze its relationships in a much better manner. So what happens is that when we are able to measure the concept, then we are able to provide we are able to obtain a precise degree of relationship between concepts. Say, for example, I'll put it like this. You want to study the relationship between domestic violence in the house and the ability to express love among adults. I'll put it in a different way now. Domestic violence experienced in the childhood and ability to express love in adulthood. Suppose you want to study this. Now, if you want to study this, the qualitative method people will simply collect interviews, and the subjective interpretation of the investigator will be documented. In quantitative research, it will be entirely different. We will have to measure, what do we mean by domestic violence? Does domestic violence mean violence by men towards women, or it could be from women towards men also? We will also have to answer different subtle aspects, shades of domestic violence. Shouting of the husband over his wife. Is it domestic violence? Shouting by the wife over husband. Is it domestic violence or not? We will have to answer all these questions. We will have to create measurability of the domestic violence. Similarly, ability to express love. Now, what do we mean by ability to express love? This concept, what is this concept? What do we mean by concept? Concept is nothing but a collection of ideas, collection of expressions and ideas, and also collection of observations. We can very simply say that concept actually is collection of ideas, observations, and aspects, subtle aspects revolving around a certain behavior. Now, we should be able to measure these aspects. And when we are able to measure them quantitatively in numerical terms, then we are able to establish relationship in a very strong and clear-cut manner. Now, dear friends, we are talking about nature of quantitative research. So one thing is very clear from my discussions so far. One thing is that quantitative research is concerned with measurement, and the first and foremost thing aspect of quantitative research is measuring the phenomena which you are studying. The most important thing is that you should be able to measure it. And the measurement has to be even of the mental aspects, emotional aspects, social aspects, anthropological aspects, and yes, of course, physical aspects. If we are able to measure, then only our study can proceed further. And this measurement can be either directly observable or it can be indirectly observable, the secondary data, minute books, say for example, of the board of directors of a company, minute books of the staff council meetings that you have, that could be provided, that could provide a secondary data, indirectly observables. And yes, we have to measure also those phenomena which are neither directly observable nor indirectly observable, such as the concepts. And what are these concepts? These concepts are nothing but collection of ideas, collection of mental images, collection of observations, collection of expressions of different types, and their shades and degrees of expression should be captured. And when we are able to do that, then our study begins. So as far as the quantitative research is concerned, it is considered the first concern of this is measurement. And why it is the first concern of why why measurement is the first concern? Because quantitative research rests on the idea of empirical examination of the phenomena. And why it rests on empirical examination of the phenomena? Because it arises out of a school of thought which says that only that knowledge is acceptable which is observable, repeatable, testable, measurable, can be experienced only by five senses, and is objective. So this sequence of arguments, I hope, is clear to you. So this is one aspect of the quantitative research. Now, when we say that the cornerstone of quantitative research, cornerstone of implementing quantitative research is measurement. So that takes us to the next aspect. And that next aspect is what do how is this measurement actually implemented? This measurement is implemented, my dear friends, with the help of indicators and dimensions. You know, there are some indicators and there are dimensions. You know, quantitative researcher specifies dimensions and identifies indicators of each dimension. Now, what is this dimension? Very simple. We take up a concept, whatever the concept is, and we try to find out what are its different aspects. Say, for example, as I said, compassion. So what are the aspects of compassion? What are the ways in which compassion can really be expressed or it can be experienced? So we may say, well, aspects of compassion are compassion towards fellow human beings, compassion towards animals. Very simple. Compassion towards nation. Compassion towards, I'm sorry, not compassion towards nation, say compassion towards strangers, compassion towards family members, compassion towards knowns, and so on. We can decide any one of these. and what could be the possible indicators of this concept of these aspects or these dimensions of compassion. Similarly, we can say, take a concept like say motivation, for instance, or interpersonal trust. Well, trust is something without which we cannot live. All right. Now, what do we mean by trust? What are the different aspects of trust? So trust, which is relating to what? Workplace trust, trust towards spouse, trust towards children, right? These could be different aspects of trust. And what are the indicators of these trusts of different type? So these are the two things that we have to be very clear about, dear friends. So measurement is implemented with the help of what we can say the dimensions and the indicators of those dimensions. Now, from here, we move to yet another aspect of measurement. And that aspect relates to deciding the reliability and validity of your measures. What are the ways in which, what do we mean by reliability? You know, we develop indicators. We have dimensions. Each dimension has indicators. And based on those indicators, we create statements. Just say, like, for example, I'll give you an example. Say, for example, you are studying trust at workplace right away. Now, what are the dimensions of trust at workplace? So, trust at workplace, who is trustworthy? You go around, ask the subjects, you collect data, that is mental conceptions. Based on that, you create certain commonalities. And when you make those commonalities, you arrive at certain points. And what are those points? Point number one, loyalty. This is one aspect. It is an indicator. Number two, being there when needed. Second aspect. Number three, cooperation. The persons are that cooperation, degree of cooperation. Say, for example, only these three are there. There could be many more. Now, we make statements regarding each of these indicators. Statements means sentences. These sentences are questions, which will become part of a bigger questionnaire, which we call technically instruments. Now, whatever statements that we write, these statements should satisfy two conditions. Number one, the condition of reliability, and secondly, the condition of validity. And what is reliability? Reliability is actually concerned with consistency of the questionnaire. That is to say, what do we mean by consistency? That if we administer a particular questionnaire again and again, the results should be more or less the same. Now, there are a lot of difficulties in this regard, but within the limited time frame, I can only talk about this. That reliability of the measure must be determined. It is about the stability of the questionnaire that you are preparing for measuring a particular concept. And there are statistical methods, statistical indicators such as Cronbach alpha and others, which are there. And we make use of those for the purposes of determining what is the consistency of our measure. And it also is concerned with stability over time. Okay, and there are a large number of ways that we can do it. Like, for example, there is a split half method. In the split half method, what we do is that we divide our questionnaire into two parts. And we try to study the correlation in the responses of two parts. And then we decide, and we try to study the variability of the of the scores that have been obtained from the two parts. And then we try to see whether there is consistency or not. Similarly, there is Cronbach's alpha. This is nothing but it is based on the standard deviation of the responses obtained on one particular, on each item as compared with the entire instrument, the standard deviation of the entire instrument. So based on that, we are able to determine the internal consistency. And then we have, my dear friends, the validity of the measures. As I am again saying, that entire quantitative research rests on the concept of measurement. So whatever we are measuring, that has to be measured most accurately, precisely, systematically, without any bias. And for this purpose, we must determine that the instrument that we are using, look, the questionnaire is not called just a questionnaire. We call it instrument. The best word for this is instrument for measuring the concepts. And what are the concepts? Concepts are collection of ideas, observations, expressions. These collection of ideas, measurements, collection of ideas and expressions and observations, these have to be measured with the help of indicators. These indicators are statements. The collection of these statements is known as instrument, which is in common language is known as the questionnaire. And we try to determine the consistency of that particular instrument in terms of by using various statistical tools. And the second aspect that we try to determine is the validity. And validity is what? Validity is that we must prove that the instrument that we are using, the set of statements we are using, the questionnaire that we are using, that questionnaire is measuring what it is saying it is measuring. It should not be like that, that you are saying that you are measuring compassion, but in fact, you are measuring love. Love and compassion are quite correlated. Wherever there will be kindness, there will be expression of love also. So your questionnaire, when you are saying that you are measuring compassion, you are measuring kindness, then you should be measuring only compassion and kindness and not love. Although love and compassion are very closely related. Say, for example, you are measuring hope. Hope means that you have something positive to think about the future. So when you are measuring hope is very closely related to what we technically say resilience. If you have hope, then you pursue that hope. And when you pursue that hope, you are able to fight back in the face of setbacks in your life. But the instrument of hope, the questionnaire which is measuring hope, should not be measuring resilience. And the instrument which is measuring resilience should not be measuring hope, my dear friends. So validity of the measures has to be determined very clearly. And there are different types of validities that we have, like we have face validity. And face validity means what? That just by looking at the instrument, by looking at the question, apparently it reflects the contents are reflecting the basic aspects of what you are trying to measure. This is known as face validity. And then we have concurrent validity. What is concurrent validity? That, researcher employs some kind of a criterion, some other criterion, which is closely related to this. And we try to see whether based on that criterion, does our instrument measure or not measure what we are trying to actually measure really. And then there is predictive validity. What is predictive validity? Very simple. A person, for example, let's say a person who is high on hope. What can we expect from this person who is high on hope? So we can expect that this person will be, will not be depressed. Say, for example, will have less anxiety. Say, for example. So then, if our instrument is able to rightly predict what can be expected from the people on high hope, people high on hope, then we will say this is the predictive validity. And then, of course, there are other ways of examining the thing, examining the instruments. And if a measure, but remember one thing here, I would like to say that reliability and validity, although they are distinguishable, but actually they are quite correlated, quite related among themselves. If a measure is not reliable, it cannot be valid. This we have to keep in mind. So finally, we come to the, when we are discussing the quantitative research. So one thing I have made very clear again and again, that the obsession of quantitative research is with precise, accurate, systematic, robust measurement of whatever is directly observable, indirectly observable, or whatever is not even directly, indirectly observable. That is, it is concerned with measurement of all concepts. And these concepts can be measured with the help of dimensions and indicators. That is one thing. And we develop instruments, questionnaires, whose reliability and validity is examined. Now, having understood this, what we can say in general, what we can conclude about the approach, thrust, and focus of quantitative research. The focus, thrust, and quantitative research, apart from measurement, is establishing causality. What is the flow of causality? Whether A leads to B or B leads to A. This is one very important aspect. Second aspect is generalization. That is, we should be able to make a generalization about the phenomenon on the basis of whatever data we collect and gather. And we say also that in quantitative research, we are very much concerned that our study should be such that it should be replicatable. If not in the identical conditions, at least in the similar conditions. In case of sciences, it should be replicable 100% in a 100% way. But in case of social sciences, some concession is given because human beings are fluid beings. And human environment is a fluid environment. But still, that approximate replication should be definitely there, dear friends. And finally, the quantitative approach must make use of robust statistical tools. If the statistical tools are not utilized, then the purpose of quantitative research will not be served. Based on this, we follow, based on these principles, we follow the quantitative research. So, my dear friends, this was all about, we could talk as far as the nature of quantitative research is concerned in this small period of about 1 hour. Now, I think we can have questions.
Nirmalya sir, you are on mute.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Dr. Sharma, thank you very much for this very fascinating talk on quantitative research. I belong to the field of literature, which you mentioned, and it was very interesting to hear that emotions like love and anger can also now be, it has to be quantified and measured for a kind of a generalized viewpoint to emerge out of something. So I think humanities and social sciences have always have been using quantitative research methodologies, but I think humanities subjects like English literature also now need to look into this area of research, where many things need to be actually worked out through quantitative analysis.
May I May I just say one thing?
Yes, yes, sir.
Let me say one thing. Take
Yeah.
your argument further. In the field of language studies, sir,
Yes, yes,
large number of quantitative tools are being utilized.
that's
For
right.
example, how to teach English, for example. What are the best ways of teaching English? In this, in developing these methods, lot of quantitative research studies are taking place.
Yeah.
For example, one I can tell you, one study was conducted to find out whether a native English speaker is a better teacher or a non-native English teacher is better for teaching people how to speak English. And you know what they found? They found, using again the quantitative tools only, they found that non-native, not English, non-English natives were better teachers of grammar.
Yeah.
And native English teachers were better for teaching the speaking English.
Okay.
Now, so this kind of studies have been conducted in the field of language.
I'm
In
sure.
the field of linguistics also, large number of quantitative studies are being undertaken now.
Right. But before I hand over to Dr. Arnav to ask the questions which our participants have been asking, I just wanted to apprise my participants that I forgot to mention that in his very checkered career, where he has many distinctions, one of the things was that Dr. Sharma has been the director at the Maharaja Agrasen Institute of Management Studies. And also he has been the director at the JRE group of institutions. So now I hand over to Dr. Arnav to take over the questions and to see what the questions were from our participants. Dr. Arnav.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Sir, I would be asking 2, 3 questions on common themes. So, for example, there are a set of questions from Madhurima, Aanchal, Surya, and Divya, and all of these are concerned with how and when should we decide whether we have to go for mixed methods research or qualitative research or quantitative research. And in social science, is there something that one is preferable to other or to a combination of the two?
You see, the question is very simple, and for a simple question, the answer can also be very simple, although sometimes the answer can be more complicated than the question. What is the name of the questionnaire? You said Madhurima.
Madhurima, Surya, Aanchal.
Madhurima, Surya, Anchal. Yes. My answer to the question is, it will all depend on the kind of problem you are addressing. What is your research problem? And what exactly do you want to study? Now, I'll give you one example of this. A student in the Department of Commerce, University of Delhi, was studying the impact of FDI, impact of foreign direct investment in multi-brand retail. Now, this is what he was studying. Now, obviously, he wanted to see the impact, what is the impact? Impact on employment, impact on incomes, impact on other aspects also of life. So what he did, he collected quantitative data. All right. And he ran regressions, simple regressions, quantitative tools he used. But one of the research objectives of his was to find out the social political impact of multi-brand retail also. That is, he wanted to examine. Now, how to go about this? That was the question. There was absolutely no literature on this subject. So he decided that he will use qualitative tools also. So in his thesis, there was one chapter that was fully devoted to the quantitative analysis of the data, where he employed different types of regression methods. And another chapter was based on qualitative data analysis. And what he did, that he went to a large number of locations, different locations across the city of Delhi. He went to these multi-brand retail means these malls. For example, he went to this location where Select City Mall is in Delhi. And he went to the areas around that place and talked to large number of people. He recorded the interviews and he asked them number of questions. Okay, what has happened to the lifestyle of the people? Very open-ended kind of questions. What happened to the lifestyle of the question or of the people here? What is the role of the local MLA? What are the parties doing here? Political parties doing here? And so on. And he arrived at, on the basis of these analysis, a very important model of the impact of multi-brand retail upon the social, economic, and political life of the host countries. So it all depending on the way he had defined his problem. So essentially, whether you use the mixed method or you use the quantitative method or you just use the qualitative method, that will depend on the kind of problem you have and number one. Number two, how deep you really want to go into the problem. Normally, I would suggest that to find out, to discover the new dimensions of the problem, you should start with qualitative methods. Okay. After that, you should go in for the study of the quantitative method. For example, there is one study which is going on. I am aware of that. And that study is for pursuing the PhD only. That the person wants to know about he wants to know the sensibility or sensitivity, emotional sensitivity of the person in superior position and the success of subordinates. This is the topic that the person is examining. And do you know what this person is doing? He has picked up the popular literature. Popular literature, assuming that literature is the mirror of the society. So he is picking up the hypothesis of the sensitivity from the literature. That is qualitative research. Narrative analysis is employing for that purpose, which the students or scholars of humanities, scholars of literature employ. And he is picking up, building up his hypothesis on the basis of that. And after building up these hypotheses on the basis of the popular literature, he will go on to collect data using the quantitative research methods, measuring them, and then, of course, employing the statistical tools to arrive at some conclusions. So this kind of research can also be done. You can think of other methods, other things also in this regard. That is what it is. I hope I have answered this question.
Yes, sir. In fact, in the responses, they are also satisfied.
Okay.
Sir, just to follow up this to clarify further, there is a question from Smita, who has also been your student at Sri Ram College. So her question is that, is a qualitative research more fruitful given the fact that quantitative research is linear while human resources encompasses facts but values, more focus on values and emotions?
You see, it is difficult to say that whether my right arm or my index finger is more important or this middle finger is more important. It's a question like that. Both the methods have their own utility. You have to decide what you want to do. But normally speaking, my experience is very strange in this regard. My experience is that the papers I have published using the quantitative tools, although we used very novel concepts, we did not receive as many citations of that kind of work. Maybe I'm lucky or unlucky, I don't know about it. But the papers which I have written using qualitative techniques, those papers have received a lot of citations. I don't know, this is my personal experience. So we cannot make a generalizations on the basis of one individual's experience. Maybe that my quantitative studies or my quantitative publications or my publications using the quantitative tools were not all that good. It is quite possible. But I still think that qualitative studies have lot of scope because they provide huge flexibility to us. But only thing is that if you are able to challenge existing theories, or if you are able to establish new theories, or if you are able to give a new perspective on the basis of the study that you are doing, then uh, qualitative research will definitely be a better way of looking at things. Because qualitative method provides you that kind of flexibility of looking at things in your own unique manner. The quantitative tools restrict you. Of course, they are robust. There's no doubt about it. They are robust. They are rigorous. They are far more rigorous, far more robust than the methods of qualitative technique. But the kind of flexibility that is provided by the qualitative methods, that flexibility adds to the richness of the analysis. And it gives us the flexibility to add new perspectives, new dimensions, and new aspects, which can then be taken up later on for robust quantitative statistical examination.
Sir, and in fact, you have answered my other question also. And sir, final one in this regard from Pragati. I think she is from natural sciences discipline.
Okay.
So her question is, can qualitative techniques be applied in pure sciences?
Well, not exactly. In pure sciences, it has to be, you know, the value system that drives the scientific investigation, that particular aspect has to be based on uh, the quantitative analysis. Otherwise, the procedures for the pure sciences, including medical science, we wouldn't say medical science is not the pure science, just as physics is, chemistry is. But in medical science, we are dealing with the lives of the people. But the value system that drives your investigation, that will definitely affect. Now, one thing more. Here, I would like to add one point. You know, the in pure sciences, particularly in physics, now we are talking about the quantum analysis, quantum physics. Ever since Einstein's theorems came, or Heisenberg's work came into the fore, ever since then, a lot of work is going on. And the quantitative research assumes a Newtonian world. What is a Newtonian world? Newtonian world is that there is a linear relationship between cause and effect. Cause comes first and effects come later. All right? And I think it appeals to the common sense also. But this is what the Newtonian world is. Okay? Now, this Newtonian model is now being challenged. And it is being challenged on the grounds like the following. For example, in the Newtonian model, we say that the observation has to be objective. And I said in the beginning of my lecture also that there has to be a difference between observer and the observed. Now, quantum physicists, on the other hand, have found that the particles, they behave differently when they are being observed by the researcher. And they behave in a different way altogether when they are not being observed. So the Newtonian model is being challenged. Another thing, another example is that in this CERN laboratory, where particles were made to collide, some substantial quantum of data was collected over there, and it was found that when the particles get collided, these particles break into pieces. Now, this is very natural. We know when the two objects collide in this universe anywhere, they will break if they cross a certain level of force. So when particles got collided, they broke. They broke into pieces, but they broke into pieces of not smaller sizes as expected. I hope you'll agree with me. When the two objects collide, they would break, and they would break into smaller pieces. But what was observed in case of these particles there was that these particles broke into pieces, but not the pieces of a smaller size, but they broke into pieces of equal size, same size as before, as before. Now, this observation is very strange. The observation is that construction and destruction both are taking place at the same time. So what is causing what? Is it the destruction which is causing construction? Or it is something else? So the Newtonian model of cause and effect is completely broken. And yes, there are other studies also moving along the same lines. So they are now talking about studying the physical phenomena more in probabilistic terms rather than in certain terms. Newtonian model is expressing cause and effect purely in terms of certainty. Uncertainty has no place in the Newtonian model. So as far as pure sciences are concerned, a lot of mathematical models are being built up now to describe the behavior of particles which are probabilistic in character rather than the models which are based on the assumption of certainty as Newtonian model prescribed. So it is from now I think this is a reply that I could give, and it is not a clear yes or clear no to saying whether qualitative approach can be applied to the pure sciences or not. I cannot say yes, I cannot say no straight away directly, but what I can say is that the new observations are being made, new discoveries are being made, and these new discoveries, these new analyses are saying that instead of following the certainty based, the cause and effect based, clear cut, linear Newtonian model, there is also a possibility of studying the physical phenomena by following the probabilistic, not so certain, uncertain method. That is what I can say about it.
Yes, sir. Sir, there are other few sets of questions from Rajni, Shivani, and Arnab Datta, which are regarding developing a scale and main points to be considered and whether item analysis is essential.
Yes, certainly. I think the question, the answer is hidden in your question. Yes, item analysis must be done, and the quality of your instrument will essentially depend on the quality of statements that you are making. And for this purpose, for developing the items, there is a book by Klein, Kline, that you can follow. And best way is that you get the responses from diverse number of people. If you try to take the responses, say for example, you want to develop an instrument on say incivility in work organization. Suppose you want to develop an instrument on uncivil behavior or incivility, as we call it. So what will be the starting point? The starting point should be your interviews on what do they understand and what are the experiences of the people of the incivility. And try to follow then the phenomenological approach in discovering those aspects. That is qualitative approach. That is what is in the mind of the individual. That is essential components of the consciousness of the individual. If you are able to bring that down, the essential components of the consciousness of the individual. If you can really bring that down on piece of paper, and then you are able to convert it into statements, then your instruments have greater likelihood of being more strong and robust. And for this purpose, of course, you will have to gather data from large number of people, number one. Number two, it will be very time consuming exercise. So that you have to decide how much time you are prepared to spend in this regard.
Yes, sir. And there is one question from Nilima Bishwas, which is that in social sciences, there are ideological biases. How to resolve this in proceeding for research?
Yeah, as far as ideological biases are concerned, yes, they are there. They are definitely there. In social sciences, it is very difficult to say something can be absolutely objective, because as far as the undercurrent is concerned, there will definitely be some bias. But I would rather say that it is better not to follow any ideology. What can be in the greater good of the humanity? That you think, try, and attempt. Because this statement which I'm saying, greater good of humanity, this itself, what do we mean by greater good of humanity? This itself would be ideologically driven. So some kind of ideological bias will always be there. But my personal opinion is that nation first, country first, we first, equality first, compassion first, kindness first. If these are the values that you follow, and of course, you should not have political bias. Most important is not have political bias. Have the bias in favor of those who are disadvantaged. That's it.
Sir, in this context, if the participant is asking the question from, say, again from literature point of view, if we are looking at a certain kind of analysis or a certain kind of interpretation of a text, which is through a certain what we can call a bias or a certain way of looking at things. But then if what I understood from your lecture, if that can be filtered through a quantitative analysis and a quantitative kind of support through quantitative research, maybe that has some value in that. Otherwise, we just say, we interpret things on our own by using a critical or an analytical or a theoretical tool. But if that tool, if whatever our analysis is, can also be filtered through a quantitative methodology of research, I think it will only benefit and probably also take it away from the bias, so-called bias that we are talking about.
Yes, entirely. I entirely agree with you. I think Dr. Samanta has addressed this question to a very great extent. I think completely he has addressed it fantastically. He nailed it actually.
No, I mean,
So I think that can be done. Yes, definitely that can be done. Yes.
Yes, Arnav?
Yes, sir, just a couple of questions, sir, then we will. Sir, I know this is very basic, but there are many young researchers who are listening to you, and they are sometimes confused between interrelationship, sequence, and dependence between research question, objectives, and hypothesis. So, if you could shed some light on this.
Research question.
Objectives and hypotheses.
You see, there is a very clear, quantitative research is very linear. You identify the research gap. Based on that research gap, you find out what is the objective. What do you want to accomplish? You want to fill up those gaps. And while filling up those gaps, what do you want to accomplish? Okay? Never say that you want to understand a subject. It is not original. You have to say you have to either analyze, identify certain things. You identify a phenomena, you analyze a certain phenomena, you examine, you evaluate. So these are your objectives. Okay, you want to evaluate something, you want to examine something, you want to say identify certain phenomena, all right? And that is one thing. And based on these objectives, you have to raise research questions. And best way of raising a research question is that the answer to the research question should be in the form of yes or no. And once you have the research question, then you can frame the hypothesis. Presence or, I mean, either it is accepted or not accepted. Actually, hypothesis is a little more detailed expression of the aspects of the research question. You know, this is what I would say. So have objectives. Objectives will lead to certain research questions. And research questions should finally lead to your hypothesis. I would just say, for example, if one person was studying the relationship between personal trust and organizational performance. This was one researcher who was following this topic, a study of relationship between interpersonal trust and organizational performance. This was the topic. So what were the objectives? So one of the objectives was to, relational objectives. What are the factors which, number one, what are the factors which affect the relationship between trust and performance? What is the meaning of trust? Objectives. What is organizational performance? These are the questions that the person had listed. Does trust affect organizational performance? To find out what is the flow of causality between trust and performance. These were the kind of questions that the person had presented. How is the relationship between trust and performance influenced? These are the objectives to identify the relationship, the factors. And based on this, this particular researcher wrote certain questions. One question was, is there a relationship between trust, dimensions of trust and dimensions of performance? Is there a relationship between them? Very simple question. Dimensions, he mentioned. Now, what are the dimensions? There are 4 dimensions of trust and 4 dimensions of performance. So each dimension's relationship with the other 4. So 16 hypotheses were built up just for relationship. Then another question relating to the factors affecting research questions. Plain simple research questions. Is trust and performance relationship moderated / mediated by motivation? Is trust and performance relationship moderated / mediated by, say conflict resolution methods followed in the organization, and so on? The person had a list of questions, and for each list of questions, the individual had a stated hypothesis. And for these research questions, then he, in the research methodology chapter, this person mentioned, for this research question, I am following this method. For second research question, I am following this method. For the third research question, I am following this method. That's it. And the methods were elaborated. So
Yes, sir.
Again, quantitative method is very linear. All right. So in quantitative methods, your real contribution is, I mean, since young researchers are asking this question, so I would say one thing very clearly to you. Please focus on this, and if you can do that, you can become better researchers. You know, maximum effort that I have seen research students paying attention to is the last part of their research project. That is, they talk like this: I have employed structural equation modeling. I have used Hayes mediation method. I am employing PLS. Now, people are talking of their research in terms of the method they are employing, but the method is not so important. You have to pay maximum attention to the introduction part, my dear friends. Introduction part means the evolution of the concept, how you are evolving this concept that you are trying to examine, how you are evolving the relationships which you are going to study, and what is their relevance, how this evolution of the relationships, evolution of the concepts, that is going to extend the frontiers of knowledge, how you are going to extend the knowledge, the frontiers of knowledge in the subject of your study. That should be the focus. You should give maximum possible time to that initial portion. And if you are able to do that, then you will automatically be able to do lot of original work. And once that portion is original, then methods will, number one, automatically follow. Your papers will not be accepted by good journals on the basis of the kind of statistical tool you are employing. It will be published on the basis of the originality of your contribution. That is what it is. I hope I have answered this question, and I've answered a little more than what was expected from me.
Yes, sir, but it has clarified many other things also, associated things. And Nirmalya, sir, I know it is time is over, and sir has asked this question, answered all questions, but let me, sir, ask this one final question. Otherwise, participants of this program will give us sleepless nights, and they will also have sleepless nights. So, sir, actually, this is, they are ultimately students, so they are concerned with the assignment that you have given. So we have shared the questions, but they are looking for more details as to sources apart from your lecture, and is there any limit on words or pages? They are asking like
Look,
students.
as far as the limits on words, etc., are concerned, that is the business of the organizers. I think you can better answer them. Number one. Number two, as far as book is concerned, they can all consult a book by Alan Bryman, Alan Bryman, Alan Bryman. The title of the book is Social Research Methods. There may be a co-author also along with him, but this is
So there is a little connectivity problem at your side, I think. Right, Arnav?
Yes, sir. Sir's window is frozen. I
also,
think.
that video also will
Yeah,
start.
now it's okay. Now it's okay. Now it's okay. So, Arnav, anything else?
Sir, good. We are done.
We're done. Dr. Sharma, again, on behalf of my college, on behalf of my principal, Dr. S.P. Agarwal, on behalf of the coordinator of this program, Dr. Lata Sharma, and all my colleagues who are with us in this program, organizing the entire organizing committee, a very, very heartfelt thanks to you. And we are immensely grateful for your presentation and for the lectures that are there already on the portal. We look forward to you for your advice, guidance, and mentorship for all our programs. And we look forward to a continued association with you. Thank you once again.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Nibalia. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity of interacting so indirectly with such a large number of audience.
That's
Thank you
true.
very much.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Our pleasure, sir. Our pleasure. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Very much, sir.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.